Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, and today I've got a returning guest, the fabulous Harris Hill. They are a childhood trauma coach, and we've previously done an episode about why we choose the wrong relationships, but today we're going to focus on boundaries and how we can set healthy boundaries. So welcome, Harris.
Hey, Lyn, it's so nice to be back. So thank you for having me again.
You're very welcome. And, I think this is a crucial one because I can remember, even in my sort of long and lustrous life, having to learn about boundaries at quite an old age, to be honest with you, because this isn't something we're taught in schools and it's not usually taught by our parents. And we certainly don't usually have any adult role models for how to set healthy boundaries, do we?
No, and it's one of the really good predictors of your relationship moving forward if you're both good at boundaries. And I think for those of us who've had a difficult time with relationships in the past and people mistreating us, our idea of boundaries can be very one-sided. The idea that we have to continuously put up these boundaries of defense. So I don't like it when you do that. I don't want you to do that. I don't like being spoken to that way. We often think of boundaries purely as a way to defend ourselves and to stop mistreatment from happening, but it's so much more than that. And often if that's where we've come from or where we've started, as was the case for me, we can then be in healthy situations or with people who are safe. They might not be perfect, but they're safe enough, they're nice enough people. And then we might find that actually our boundary function it's not very developed. We might get overly invested in fixing other people's problems or doing too much for them. It's really common, especially if you've been kind of like the parentified child. You were the child in the family that everyone lent on emotionally, or even more than that, even for practical things that were not really your job to do. As adults, we can often find ourselves in relationships with people who we end up parenting by accident, even if that partner is not particularly interested in you parenting them. Often that's what we've learned care looks like.
So true. And I have to put my hands up and say I've been guilty of that. I've been the consummate people pleaser and carer within my family dynamic and into my adult relationships as well.
Yeah. I've definitely done it. And the thing is that by the time somebody's been parented by someone they were originally attracted to, and then by the time you're that resentful, usually, that this person is not self-sufficient, then it becomes this kind of pseudo parent-child relationship in which nobody's massively happy, and the attraction often falls away because of that as well.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be in a relationship with their parent, do they? Well, not an intimate one.
Or equally, you might feel like, the equal person that I've chosen has now taken on this very childlike role, and you don't feel that way about someone who's a dependent either.
Yeah, very true. Absolutely. And I think we need to, especially get out of our heads that anybody needs actually fixing, don't we? Unless they ask you for help, assume that they don't need it.
Yeah, I was talking with a client the other day, and they were talking about, this complicated person, and but they still wanted to help them. And I said, do you understand the difference between helping and enabling? And they were like, no. And I explained with the analogy, if a friend of yours has said, I need to dig a big hole in the garden because I want to put a pond in, can you help me? Helping looks like both of you digging that hole.
Absolutely.
Enabling is when someone says, oh, I can't possibly, I'm just so stressed about it and I can't do it and I don't know what to do and I've never done this before. And then you turn up, they might make you a cup of tea, but mostly they just watch you do it.
You're the one stupidly digging the whole hole.
Yeah, and they're the ones sat there like the helping is a collaboration. Obviously, it's different when we're talking about children who can't do things for themselves, you know, they're or vulnerable people that we're caring for. But generally, peer-to-peer relationships, two adults in relationship together, helping is about collaboration. It's not
Absolutely.
about doing for the other person.
Yeah, and that's even if you want to do for the other person, because quite often by doing that all the time for that other person, they then get to think that you'll always be that person that rescues them. And then you become the bitter one because you feel like, you're always doing it all.
Yes, and actually it puts them in a powerless or unempowered role, because even if they start off doing something for themselves and you take over because you cared for them one time and it just kind of became a habit, or you don't feel that they do it well enough, you know, maybe the way they stack the dishwasher really irritates you and you just took over even though you hate doing it, but you want to do it better. It then pushes the other person into a situation that they actually might not have been in if you hadn't interfered. And has anyone ever talked about the drama triangle on here?
I think we have talked about it, but I always like to invite people to talk about, their subject from their point of view, because you'll deliver it in a totally different style and way that a previous guest has done.
Fair. So, for those who are uninitiated or need a reminder, the drama triangle is a triangle of 3 points, and you've got rescuer, victim, and persecutor. There might be different words for it, but that's ultimately what it is. And it's not to say that you can't help somebody, that you aren't a genuine victim, or that you haven't made a mistake. It's almost like this complete, it's in my mind, it's a power dynamic. So on the one hand, I can accept that I've been a victim of a crime or that somebody's done wrong against me. That's not the same as being a victim in the drama triangle. The victim, perpetrator, and persecutor are almost this lens through which we view ourselves or others with 100%. And it's not to say that that's invalid, but it makes it difficult to move forward from there. And if we, as a kind of people pleaser, enabler, fixer, we often will take on the role of rescuer, which looks a bit like parenting, because that's how we feel useful and how we like things to be done, and we feel in control. And kind of because you're taking over a power, that end of the power dynamic, it then will put people, even if they weren't there originally, often in either the victim role where they're sort of disempowered and you're kind of undermining them, or at least teaching them that they're powerless or that they don't need to take part in their lives as a fully fledged adult. Or you might even put them in perpetrator because they're getting angry that you're repeatedly overstepping a boundary, or that you're behaving in a way that's not balanced or healthy. So when any of us step into part of the drama triangle and we do it repetitively over and over again, just for the sake of it, then it often will start to put other people in a different position of power that's unbalanced.
And that can interchange, can't it? One person in one particular situation can be the victim, and the next day, they might be the persecutor.
Yeah.
It's not like the same person is always the victim in those drama triangles, is it?
No, it's different. And in fact, I can think of people I know who are consistently the perpetrator within their own family dynamic, you know, their nuclear family at home. But the moment that they're within their family of origin, you know, their parents, their siblings, they're very much the victim. So actually them having a persecutor role in their sort of married home is where they kind of get that power back because they didn't have
Interesting,
it to
isn't
begin
it?
with.
I find human behavior so interesting to observe and listen to. So in terms of setting boundaries, then what do people really need to be aware of? Because sometimes I think well, certainly a lot of my clients haven't even been aware that they haven't got any firm boundaries in place.
It's really difficult. I think if you've grown up in a home where boundaries are not common, they're not encouraged, and in fact, if you try to make one, you're laughed at or criticized, it can feel like a very alien and scary thing to do. But to go through your life without them at all will be far worse than the discomfort of learning them and getting good at them over a relatively short amount of time. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And also, when we start to get good at boundaries, that also means that we have to get good at accepting other people's boundaries. And it's not always pleasant to be told no, or to be told, I actually don't like it when you do that. If you're not used to that kind of honest feedback, and you've not been modeled, in your own life, how gracefully you can take that feedback, that's probably going to feel like a criticism, or not very nice anyway.
No, it can make you
So
feel like you're being rejected in some way, can't it?
yeah, so I think my initial thing is that it's going to be uncomfortable for a bit, but you'll get the hang of it. And actually, the better at boundaries you are, then the more you attract other people who are also good at boundaries, which means generally healthier relationships, a calmer nervous system, and just sort of growing as a human being and generally being happier. It's not necessarily a comfortable part of the journey, but it's 100% worth it. But I think beyond that, a few key things that I would say about boundaries. One, if we've come from a tricky background, often when we try to lay a boundary down, we think of it as defensive. So we get into this mindset of justifying the boundary and arguing for why it's correct. You don't need to do that. And I see this all the time when someone says, oh, with my partner or my parent or my sibling, they said this thing and it was just it really hurt my feelings. Are they definitely an a-hole? And I was like, but you didn't like it. And they're like, yeah, but were they wrong? And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't like it. But you have to tell them. It's not, I think when the bar is so low, because what we've grown up with and what we've been used to has been relatively poor in terms of emotional health. The idea that we can say no just because it doesn't feel good to us seems like an enormous luxury, and almost like quite self-indulgent, and a lot of people will even say selfish. But actually, you're not meant to do things that you don't want to do. I mean, in terms of brushing your teeth or making sure your kids go to school, or sort of the things that we are obligated to do. Unfortunately, those are things that we could choose not to do it, but the consequences wouldn't be worth it, probably. But generally speaking, especially when it comes to interpersonal stuff, you're not obligated to do anything.
No, that's very true.
And
Sorry.
yeah, so I was just going to end with that part by just saying that on the one hand, follow how you feel about it. Actually, I hate ironing. So if I ever lived in a house and shared it with a partner, and they were like, we were dividing the chores, I'd say, listen, I don't iron anything that I own, and I will never touch it. And I don't care if that's unreasonable or not, because it's my life and I'm not going to spend it doing something like that. And to some people, that's really radical. And to me, it's so run of the mill. So first thing is honor how you feel about something. And the second thing is, I think boundaries are much easier to instigate once we kind of get in contact with our inner child. And when I first heard about inner child work, it sounded, can I be rude? Can I use rude language?
Absolutely. We can put an 18+ if we need to.
Okay.
We're going to use adult content, yeah.
But when I first heard about inner child work, it sounded really wanky to me, like really just I was like, what is this? And the first time I did it, it absolutely blew my socks off, and I was like, oh, this is really a game changer. Now I use it all the time in my own practice. But the thing that happens when we connect to that inner child is that we actually start to take ourselves seriously in a different way. We start to care about ourselves, if we don't already, in the way that we would for a child that we are responsible for. And I think that's a really big game changer. I think the second that we start to view ourselves as a human being, that there's something within us that is just as innocent and precious that we might think of as being present with children, I think it starts to become easier the more that people kind of take the piss, or step over a boundary, or they're being unreasonable, or they're doing something without your consent, or just something that makes you feel miserable. Suddenly you care about it in a different way. It becomes, there's just enough contrast there, I think, that wasn't there before. And it makes you think about yourself differently and take yourself a bit more seriously, and actually start to maybe even love yourself and react to things in a healthy way, if that's not been your norm before.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. I think for me, my experience was there was a lot of conflict in my family home when I was growing up between my mother and father. So I've been quite resistant to not wanting to put boundaries up, because I didn't want to create any conflict. I was always the peacemaker. So
Mm.
I literally became massively a people pleaser, but then, like we've discussed, grew resentful of always being the one that was the giver, if you like, more than my partner in a relationship, or I perceived it that way, even though they might not say that was the case. So I feel like what people need to know is that once I changed that and was able to say no and was able to risk rocking the boat, if you like, by saying, I don't want to do this or I can't, um, and not wanting to drop everything to fit around somebody else's schedule, but actually stick to my own schedule. I noticed that, that I got a lot more respect and a lot more what I perceived as a reciprocal relationship.
Mm. Yeah. I think there can be that really big fear, can't there, that when I start laying boundaries or I stop self-abandoning, I think people might not like it and they might run away because up until then, your relationships have kind of been based on this transaction that you can have anything you want from me, just don't leave me. And the moment that that dynamic changes, you're like, oh God, I really don't know how this is going to go down. And there are some people who don't like the fact that you have boundaries and don't like the fact that they can't just leech off of you the way they have been.
Mm,
But then the other side of that is that there are the people who are like, yes, finally, like you're getting it, you're caring about yourself, and they cheer you on and they can connect with you more deeply because you're able to do that. And it's so much harder. I don't know if I've mentioned this last time we spoke, but it's so much harder to connect to somebody. I've now been on the other side of things. I dated for a short time someone who was very codependent, people pleaser, and it was really chronic, and it was very humbling to be on the other side of that because I was like, wow, I see how it used to be possibly to date me when I was younger. um and I found it so difficult to connect to a person whose main concern was me.
mm,
I wanted to know how they felt. I wanted to know what they liked. I wanted to know what their preferences were. And it just felt completely unobtainable. I don't even know if they knew how they felt or what they liked. Their constant concern was with what I wanted to do, and I just found that really suffocating in the end.
yes.
It
Yeah.
was not healthy or comfortable to kind of be like to have an unwanted lion's share of the power in our relationship. But it was
And your
really
husband would probably take
unpleasant.
advantage of that. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, yes. Well, I think that is where people do tend to take advantage if they're the wrong type. In the end, I ended up ending that relationship because their boundary function was so poor that they frequently didn't respect mine and was giving me a lot of grief over what I perceived as really nothing. Um,
Mm,
and I sort of said, I feel like you need a bit more support, and I don't feel like this is I can't handle anymore, to be honest. And I really sympathized because that used to be me, but it made me really realize that even if I had met, even if that point in my life before I had started to deal with my own issues and learn about emotional and relational health and stuff like that, even if someone perfect for me who was really emotionally healthy came along, there's absolutely no way they'd have touched me with a barge pole. They'd have been like, I am not going there. And I'm not saying that because I'm looking back at myself with negativity or criticism, but just rather just a very sober and honest kind of I guess admittance that I wasn't there yet. I didn't know how to do that healthy stuff. And actually, when somebody doesn't know how to do the healthy stuff, even when they're not abusive and they're very sweet, kind people, it's a lot to sit with and try to gently explain and to kind of advocate for that person to care about themselves a bit more.
absolutely.
It's
It's
yeah,
never,
it's not something I can imagine myself doing again.
no, it's never good to put somebody on a pedestal, is it, in a relationship? Because then you're actually giving your power away, and there isn't going to be that equal, reciprocal, healthy relationship dynamic in any sort of
Exactly.
situation where somebody feels they've got more power in the relationship than the other.
Yeah, 100%.
And I really think that a lot of us don't know what we don't know until we do. So that's why we're educating people, on our podcast as we do now. and sharing this information, because there's going to be people listening that probably haven't really been aware that they probably haven't got firm boundaries in place and recognize themselves in the form of people we've described we were.
Yes. It's just reminded me of one other thing that I was going to say, which is that there might be some people listening who know that they need better boundary function and are attempting to do it, but the thing that trips them up, and this is something I support people through, and even like this week, the thing that often trips people up abandoning their boundaries is when other people become emotionally dysregulated or even just upset. So it might be that you've laid a boundary with somebody and you know that it's right and you know that it's healthy, you know that it's reasonable, but the moment that the recipient starts to tear up or starts the sob story, you go, oh, there's no way I can stick with this, because either you think that you're a horrible person because they've cried because they're reacting to something that you've said, or the fact that somebody's upset tells you on some level that that boundary must be wrong, because surely a boundary should never upset somebody, or somebody should, like, the fact that they don't like it is a sign that there must be something wrong or you've done something wrong. And I think the more comfortable we get with other people having emotions and the fact that actually that's totally fine and human beings are emotional beings, then it will stop us being so tripped up every single time someone turns the waterworks on or is just genuinely emotional. Because especially when we've grown up in an environment where we've constantly been trying to act and, you know, behave in a way that helps other people to be happy all the time, because if they're not happy, then something awful could happen and they might get violent or drunk or reject us or say something awful. So to us, we've grown up thinking like that it's really bad if people are going to have a big emotional reaction, when actually it's totally normal and healthy, and that just because someone's upset, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. And I think that's a really common trip up for boundary setting and holding.
So important that you've emphasized that. Really pleased you have, because quite often when I have sort of been confident enough to think I need to set a boundary here and be firm and risk rocking the boat, you know, that other person hasn't liked it, and then they're not necessarily turned on the waterworks. They might have got a bit angry even, you know. But the thing is, you have to know that if it's sitting right with you, if you've sort of made sure and checked in with yourself that, no, you know, I haven't overstepped my own boundary there. This is what I want. And if they don't like it, then that's fine. But what I often find is, you know, once the waterworks have worn off or the anger has worn off from the other person, they actually do respect that. And I've been told afterwards that, you know what, I didn't like it at the time that you said that, but, you know, I really respect that you did.
Yeah, and I think that's where the respect comes from, because I think if you don't have good boundary function, or you're not very good at defending your boundaries or maintaining them, and you're not good at delivering the consequences, the natural consequences of people not respecting it, you do teach people that you're a doormat. And it's not to say that there's a victim blaming going on, but rather there is a part that we play. You know, to realize our own power is also to realize the ways in which we accept things that are unacceptable, and we teach people that actually they can get away with it.
And actually, that's the responsibility that we need to learn in any relationship dynamic, isn't it? That we play our own part in how we are being treated. And if we keep allowing unacceptable behavior, then we're teaching that person that it's okay.
And I've met a lot of people who think that because they've told the person this is unacceptable and I don't like it, they think that they have good boundary function. And my question is often, well, how many times have you told them that you don't like it when they get drunk and shout at you? They're like, oh, at least 20 times. I'm very good at laying that boundary. I'm like, that's not a boundary. You telling somebody 20 times that you don't like them getting drunk and shouting at you is not good boundary function. Good boundary function sounds more like, it's unacceptable when you do that. If you do it again, we will have to reconsider the relationship. Or if you're going to go out drinking, then you can't come home drunk. Or, you know, whatever it might be.
There has to be a consequence, like you say. You just can't keep repeating that same because if they test it and you don't follow through, then they know they can keep getting away with that unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, and they know that what you're really telling them is that I'll keep accepting your behavior. It just means that each time you do it, the price is that you get an earful. And they go, yeah, fine, I can put up with that. I'll still go out and do what I want. And then I know that you're going to be annoyed and say some things, but ultimately nothing will change and I can do what I like.
Yeah. And we have to take responsibility for allowing that to be the situation.
Yeah, 100%.
So, Harris, what is your best contact information for those listeners that are tuned in that would love to connect with you?
I would love to connect with you inside my Facebook group. It's called Inclusive Childhood Trauma Healing. I think it's Facebook/group/Centre for Childhood Trauma Healing. I'd love to see you in there and give you some kind of freebies and it's a really lovely little group, very positive, very sweet people in there who have been through what other people have been through and need some help.
Excellent. I think a lot of people, although they probably haven't voiced it, have been through a lot of childhood trauma. It took me till I was 42 to be able to talk about what happened to me when I was in my teens. And, so a lot of people sit on stuff for many decades sometimes before they feel they're in an environment where they feel safe to share it, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. Takes a while.
So thank you so much, Harris, for sharing your information and your wisdom and your experiences around this very important topic of boundaries. And I'd really love to invite you on to have another conversation at some time in the future.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks so much, Lyn. It's been a pleasure.
So on that note, I'm going to end with our usual true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group 2 Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.